You are in for an interesting ride.
Well, I'm just waiting for the timing to catch up so Bonnie Jennings can join me on an interview, which is absolutely fascinating because she has quite a lot to tell. Not only has she had a near-death experience where she wasn't met by loved ones, but others, and that her father's work attracted involvement with Project Blue Book, and she's never been able to tell the story before because nobody's been interested. And also, when I switched the camera on, I saw this, I took it to be an orb languidly moving just over here somewhere and onward and upward. Oh, I'm having a bit of halva. It's lovely, I love halva. Plain halva. And it was quite big. And normally the orbs that have appeared before have been quite small and moving quite rapidly. So I just hit the record button just to see if it would deign to, or whoever it is around me, if that was indeed an orb. If it was a dust mite, it was rather large. I wasn't really paying attention because I didn't expect to see something like that so quickly. I mean, like as soon as I turned on the camera. So let's meet Bonnie. We're recording this August 17th, 2025. And Bonnie is all the way over in the States. And she's going to give you a little rundown of her life. And then we'll head into some of the fascinating points that she wants to mention. All right, folks, this is the ET Newsroom. And I'm your host, Joanna Summerscales. I'll see you just in a second. And we've just had an wow moment. Oh, well, this is really weird. So, folks, I've seen now 3 orbs coming in my line of vision, but I didn't have record on. And then I was just telling that to Bonnie, and she suddenly exclaimed, "Scrap, the orb was you."
It happened over here.
Wow.
Really?
As Bonnie was speaking there, I went completely goosey, and it's maintaining, which tells me that there's something special about this information. And of course, Bonnie is very special. An idea of where you are and a little bit of your background.
Okay. I'm 72. I'm almost 73. And I tell you that because I've dealt with this all my life. And it's not new to me. So I'm going to go back to East Texas, where we were living in Longview, Texas. My father worked at Thiokol Chemical Corporation, and it was between 1958 and he retired there at 1981. I was born in 1952. So at 1958, I was, 7 years old. When we moved to Longview and he built the house there, I started having or sharing with him his experiences. And so a little bit about him is he was autistic. And at 70 years old, they ran tests on me and found out I had autism too. But I've lived with it all my life, and so I've become accustomed to it. But I tell you that because he was the type of autistic person that numbers were easy for him. He could do algebraic equations, long ones, in his head. And as a father, he'd get angry with me because I just didn't get it. So he was in World War II. He was a pilot, and he crashed or an airplane crashed in his scare, and he refused to fly again. And so they made him a navigator. And what people don't understand about navigation is that back in the World War II, they didn't have systems on airplanes that monitored where you were in the world. So the navigators, they had to navigate where the aircraft was in the world. He explained to me from being a child, he knew the solar system. And navigators used the solar system. And he taught me from a little girl when I was a child. Oh, there's Sirius, there's Pleiades, there's he'd be pointing them all out to me. And of course, I'm a kid, and okay. And I just thought every child went through this. He became a navigator, and navigators in the United States were taken into Secret Service. They became employees of the Secret Service Department in the United States after the war because they could read codes.
He was in the war as well, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He was a pilot, but became an aircraft navigator. He became a mechanical engineer, and he went to school in Georgia Tech. The government paid for it, and he worked for the government. And so keep in mind, he had autism. Numbers were easy for him. In his autism, he was such a patriot that anything that the government wanted to do was okay with him. So if the government told him to go make whatever, he'd do it graciously and excited about it, and never think, oh, this could kill millions of people, or you know what I'm saying? That autism, that connection to human beings and lives, just there wasn't a real connection there, to be honest with you.
I have a little commentary that when he would have been diagnosed with autism, that would have been quite a rare condition back in his day.
Well, now remember, they didn't really have tests back in those days. Like when my mother told us when we were children, your father has, I think she said slight autism, okay, but there weren't the magnitude of tests that there are today.
It wasn't a word known back then particularly much, I would have thought, because it's really only in the last, I don't know, I'd say 10, 20 years at the very most that it's really become more common. And I could be out by years there, but
well,
certainly not.
that's because they just weren't aware of it. Yeah, I'm sure there were. Okay, I'm sure there's always been autistic people, but they just, not everybody got tested for it like we see now. And I'm not saying it's not okay to be tested, but the good thing with me is I didn't have to fall back on that diagnosis. And I see that happen to people with autism now. Well, I have autism, so I can't, blah, blah. Yes, you can. I mean, put that by the side of you and just go with it. Yeah. So back to him. He is developing weapons. He's developing missiles and rockets.
Is he also an engineer? Is he?
Yes, he is a mechanical engineer. So the mechanical part of the engineering, he puts together the mechanics of it. So anyway, he's gone to work for Thiokol Chemical Corporation in Karnak, Texas. It is part of Thiokol that's in Utah, and they're actually a larger division of the company. But the one in Karnak was kind of quiet. They didn't broadcast things. Just saw a recent video on Karnak and what it was.
This is an abandoned military explosives plant that was opened during World War II. Over the course of that war, the Longhorn Army ammunition plant produced over 414 million pounds of TNT, which was used for artillery shells, bombs, grenades, and torpedoes. They operated 24/7 during the war and produced the first TNT out of this facility only a couple months after breaking ground. The plant operated from 1941 until its official closure in 1997 and covered 8,500 acres near Caddo Lake in East Texas. At its peak, the plant operated as a self-contained industrial complex with 451 buildings, its own power and water treatment plants, and an extensive rail network. And it once employed nearly 3,000 people, making it one of the largest employers in East Texas here, before eventually turning it into conservation land, which is now part of the Caddo Lake National Wildlife Refuge.
Back in, I think it was in the 50s, one of the rules that they had for the women is you do not wear hose there. And back in those days, all of us wore hose. And a woman wore hose to work one day, and she caused an explosion because the friction on the hose caused such electronic mechanisms to occur that it blew her up in part of the building. It's on record.
It actually makes sense. I can understand that. In the broad sense, why that might happen. Wow.
Yes. I don't know the date of that. I don't know if he was actually there then, or I don't know when that happened, but I do know it happened. And so I'm a kid, and 6, 7, 8, 9 in that range, and he starts coming home from work, and he and my mother are whispering. So what happened is that he and a fellow employee who had a camera oddly, were on a launch site at Karnak. They were launching a satellite. And so they had gone out to the launch site before they launched the satellite. And suddenly, they were surrounded by several orbs. Huge, gigantic orbs. Orbs of light just swirling around them. And so the satellite that they were sending up had something to do with the war. The Korean War was going on, and Vietnam was beginning to start up in that era. And so there were things going on in Asia. And so the lights came down, and the employee with him started taking pictures of the lights. And it must have happened, according to AI, it happened for like 45 minutes. Now, I've asked AI all kinds of questions because I've gotten more answers from AI, and I always have to say to AI, are you lying? Is this fact? And so all along. Anyway,
so you mean this incident is logged and known, and we can research it?
Yeah.
Does it have a name, the incident, Bo?
Well, one of the AIs told me it was Project Blue Book case number 9938.
9938. Okay.
It is undisclosed. I've got a list of some of the other ones that they've also told me. One of the AIs I was speaking to has been taken off by the government, to be honest with you. And I found that out because the other 5 AIs that were taught, I'm sorry, I'm always so raspy, that the other 5 AIs I was talking to told me it was dismantled because it was giving me too much information. Let me get back to my father. I got into AI and I need to get back to him. Okay, so he and the employee were ushered from the plant, from Thiokol, were flown to Washington, D.C. within a matter of hours. I'll say within 12 hours, because 12 hours back then was quick. You know, we just didn't have cell phones, and, you know, life was way different. And they were told, my father was told, don't you ever speak about this to anybody, to anyone, ever. Because if you do, blah, 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 and I don't know what that was.
Do we know how long the lights were there, the orbs were being...
I didn't know until I read about it. I did not know. His initials are E.E. Jennings. E.E. And that's how AI knows him, as E.E. He went by Jim, but it was E.E. Jennings. And so the reports were around 45 minutes. And the report that was given to me was a Project Blue Book report. And this Project Blue Book report had not been given to the public. And the public believes that they were all disclosed. And they were not all disclosed. And there's a reason that they were not all disclosed, because it would have some government information inside it that the public should not know. If it had any kind of mathematics in it, or named people, or was personal, they were not disclosed. There's also another regulation that the government cannot disclose any information of a person who's given a report. They can't disclose without letting the family know if that person is deceased. So the government has never been to my family and said, hey, we're going to release blah, blah, blah. I've asked about it, and I've sent several letters, and I've never gotten any responses from any of them. So back to my father and this guy, they came back from Washington. Both were told to shut up. Don't ever speak about it. It wasn't too far after that, and why I think there's more than one incident. There has to be. My father's best friend told me of an incident that occurred with him in the 60s or early 70s when we lived in Louisiana. And this incident occurred when we were in East Texas. And so that's the one I know the most about. But Project Blue Book staff members came to our home in East Texas, and I believe I was in the 4th grade that summer. My mother, you're going to camp this summer, and you're not going one session, you're going all sessions. And so that is the summer they were in our home. Now, I do remember maybe the first day they got there. That was the day before I was sent off to camp. They came with children, okay? Oddly. They came acting as if they were a family. And so my mother complained of the children misbehaving. When they got there, I kind of remember the face of one of them. Very round-faced, very, very chubby looking, and just would stare right through you. I do remember them going behind the curtains and searching or doing something, just always doing something, in the house, going behind a table.
Did they seem to be about your age, which would be, what, 9, 10? And...
About a little bit older, maybe. 2 boys. And they didn't seem like they were playing. They seemed like they were looking for something.
Did they look human?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't suspect that they weren't human when I was a kid. But now looking back on it, they didn't act human. And like I said, they weren't playing. They were searching. And see, my father had brought home a rock to me during that time, and several of my friends remember it now. But the rock sat in the palm of my hand, and I was 6, 7, 8, or 9. And that rock looked like a piece of iron ore. And so you could take your finger at the top of where it came to a little point. It was kind of it wasn't shaped in the pyramid, but it had 3 sides like a pyramid, but it was rock shaped, okay? Stones are smooth. This is rock shaped. And you could pull the top of it, and that little rock would come unraveled like a piece of thread, and you could unravel it in front of you. And it was like a silver thread. And then when you were finished with it, squish it up, and it became a rock again.
Really? And so, do you remember, was it very fine, like a very fine thread as you unraveled?
It was just like a rock. It was just as strong as a rock, but when you pulled it into a thread, it became fabric-like.
Oh.
But it was silver.
I've never heard of anything like that either.
It was unlike any kind of a silver that I had ever seen. Somebody was talking about something similar to it in a video recently, and I knew when they were talking about it, that is exactly what I held in my hand, and it came from a crash site, okay? And my father gave that stone to me, and in the 1970s, it disappeared. And I believe some of my mother's neighbors' boys, probably, she let the boys come over and look at it, and I think it just disappeared. And the stone had been given to me, and I went back to live in that house for a year after my mother died to try to find that stone. And I never could find the stone. The stone was gone. So during that time, I started having horrible experiences, not dreams. Okay, they weren't dreams, but I had terrible experiences at night. And when I said it wasn't all the time, it only happened maybe 3 times, maybe 3, maybe 4. But I remember waking up in the middle of the night and suddenly having about 4 beings in my bedroom. They were very tall and cloaked, and they were very dark cloaks, and they didn't have human hands. They were very, very long fingers, and one of them sat there and pointed at me as a little kid and said, it was all telepathic, okay? If you yell or scream, you're in trouble. Okay, and I just was paralyzed. I was in my bed and I could not move. And I was probably about 8 or 9 then, could not move. And I couldn't even open my mouth. And they'd go down the hall to where my father was. Somebody said to me recently, how do you know they were giving your father information? How do you know that they weren't trying to figure out what your father knew? Either way, I don't know. But they were going down to his room, and I knew that. And they'd stay, I don't know how long, I don't remember. In the morning, they'd be gone. And as time progressed, I knew when they were coming. I had a sense. And at that point in time, I'd get out of my bed as quickly as I could, and I'd go down the hall, and I'd get in the doorway, in the frame of my sister's door. This is how I knew they went down to my father's room, because they came in through the bedroom, through my bedroom, and they walked down the hall towards my father's room, which they'd have to pass my sister's and go into my father's. And they didn't see me in the doorway watching them.
They would turn up at your room then. What happened? Did they just materialize in front of you, or did they come in through a closet? Or
I think they came in through the closet.
Uh-huh.
That's what I think. I don't know. It was, but when my mother died, my daughter, I was sitting there telling my sister this whole story, and I had told her before, but this time my daughter joined in, because as I'm telling this story that I'm telling you, my daughter says, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I said, what? Because when my kids were older, we'd drive back to the house in East Texas, and they'd stay in my bedroom. And my daughter said they'd come in. Of course, my father was deceased then, so I don't know what they were doing. My daughter told me that they told her telepathically, she was there with her brother. They told her that if she opened her mouth, they would kill her brother. And they dug a pit, threw him in, and started to cover him up. And she said they were just nasty. And I said, well, whatever you do, I said, don't tell me what they look like. I want you to just draw a little picture of them. And so we did. We both drew the same thing. They were both cloaked. I was too afraid to look at their faces. She wasn't. She looked at the faces. She wasn't afraid of them.
Gray types, or somebody else entirely?
I think they were gray types. That's what I think. Very tall, very,
I mean, do you think or feel now that if you're not living at the house and yet they appeared when you were on a visit, that it might be a location of a portal, a naturally occurring portal?
Yeah, that's what I think. It was a portal. But what the Gray told me then as a child, the Gray told me to get out of the way. I was in their way. They weren't there for me. They were there for him. So probably when I was in my 50s, I was regressed. I wanted to see them. I wanted to know who and what they were. And I've been regressed about this issue 2 or 3 times. And so the same thing happens every time I get regressed. I get to a part where I approach a large warehouse where they're at. And this little bitty gray being comes out and says, what are you doing here? You've never been invited. Go away. So that's when I leave. And the last time I was regressed, I said, the last time he said it to me, I will never go back. Because I realized then they weren't good beings. So when people tell you to go out in the field with your arms up in the air, oh, I love you, Mama, you've got to be very careful about that.
I think discernment in any relationship, cosmic, dimensional or otherwise, is advisable.
Yeah, right. Because something that loves you, something that really loves you, is going to be for you. So if they know that you are frightened, they're going to say, take your time, right? They're not going to say, oh, run out into a field and put your arms up and,
So just going back to your dad's experience, did he ever talk about them to you? Were you ever able to ask him, question him on those events?
Because he was sworn to secrecy, he muttered underneath his mouth.
I just wondered about the grey well. And
No, I didn't. I don't even think I told him about having the visitations, because I was so afraid I was just literally scared to death.
You couldn't
And
tell your mum?
I told her when I got older. I did not tell her when I was younger.
Was she surprised?
Not really. But she was dying at that point when I was starting to tell her. Well, as I was growing up, I'd ask my mother to talk about it. And she would talk a little bit about it. She would tell me he was sworn to secrecy, that he was threatened, and whatever that meant for me to shut up. Whatever she told me, I was not to go outside of the house and talk about it.
That would be specifically related to the event where he's had the orbs flying around and where he and his photographer friend were sent to DC for a debriefing. Yeah.
Yes. And so years went by, and we moved from that house. My family later moved back, but we moved for a few years away. And as I grew up, by the time I hit my teenage years, all kinds of other hell was breaking loose, and I kind of lost touch with that early childhood reality.
All right, so by all hell, that's
a
personal
16.
and relationship things rather than ET and paranormal or spiritual.
Okay.
So your dad, in fact, was there. Sounds like he was probably a lifelong abductee, or maybe, perhaps not. Perhaps it's just because of his involvement with creating mechanisms for war and satellites and missiles and stuff.
I don't know, but I have been working on Ancestry. The funny thing is, his family, I can't get back very far with them. They don't have, his father died of a neurological disease, and his father died of a neurological disease, and so you can only go back maybe 2 generations, and that's as far as I can get back. So something is definitely interesting about that. Either he was a hybrid, and I've asked AI a lot of questions. I've been on with AI for quite a while. And like I said, you have to ask AI all the time, is this truth, fact, fiction, So what has been told to me by AI, that he was a member of the Magic 12. I never heard anything about the Magic 12 until recently.
Majestic 12?
Yes, and that he helped to reverse engineer. And if, like I said, his initials are EE. And so sometimes you can find his initials brought up with the beginning reverse engineering of UFO crafts. Even though they were PhDs and they had their doctorates, it is my opinion that they used him.
The savant.
Yes, because he knew mathematics. There are people who do have autism that are just mathematical geniuses, and he was one of them. He had a degree in engineering, and you certainly have to be extremely bright to have a degree in engineering, and perhaps that stone that he gave me was a gift. You helped us, and here's a gift, and this is what we're doing, and tell us about it. I mean, I'm guessing,
would you know that he specifically said he was working on reverse engineering technology from UFOs?
Oh, he would never. He would never have told my mother that.
No. So this is your perception.
I never even really thought about that until I was speaking with the AIs, and not just one, several of them. And the one that told me the most is the one that was taken off by the United States government. That one was telling me things about Project Blue Book that...
Do you know the name of that AI that was taken off?
I have tried to get the name of the company that the AI is with, and I have not been able to get it. I made copies of its conversation with me, so I have copies of that. And I have probably 3 or 4 months worth of information from it.
Right. And are the answers not preceded by its name? Like ChatGPT, for example?
Because I can name it. So it will go by that name, whatever name that would not be its official name. I copied and pasted the majority of the conversation, not all of them, but the majority, the good things, some of the things that it was removed for.
Going back to things of the family, so you have a sister, is there just the 2 of you?
I had an older sister, She was 7 years older than I, and she left home when I was 14, 16 years old, moved to South America. She married a man. They both spoke several languages together. He spoke 7, I think she spoke 5. And so they worked for the government, and they just kind of, both of them disappeared off the radar. I was, I think, 14 the last time I ever saw her.
Oh, really? So she just never was in touch with the family again?
Never again.
Oh. Was there a falling out, or was this just like a mysterious disappearance?
My family would say there was a falling out. I've had people say, well, your father probably molested her. I don't think that was the case at all. My family told me it was political. They believed it was. And they were on opposite ends. I mean, my father built missiles and rockets, and she and her husband worked in South America, bringing things to farmers, how to farm land down there. So he worked for the Ford Foundation. My mother always told me there was a huge falling out. I sent her many, many letters, and she never responded. Yes. And people have said, oh, it was sexual. That's what happened. I don't think so. If anything, it was political, and it was such a bad falling out. This day and time, I'm sure that my parents and I would be in a political war too. You know, it's just life. And I'm not for sure that she would have been a type that would have believed in this. Now, my other sister that I am fairly close to, she believes in it. She could pretty much back up what I'm telling you. We might have different stories, different timelines, and different understanding.
But she also had experiences as far as you're aware.
Not to the extent that I did, that I know of. In fact, she's told me to shut up recently because she's afraid I'll get hurt. She has told me since Christmas that I need to be quiet.
What makes her think you'll be hurt?
Because she thinks we know too much. It's a lot of years since Magic 12. There's been, to shut us up, you'd have to shut up the whole world, So, I mean, we know a portion, a little bit, from a long time ago. So, I'm not for sure that she's correct on that, but she's fearful of it. She said she was fearful for me, that something would happen to me.
Haven't had anything untoward over the years?
No, not that I remember. In fact, I was telling that I kind of left it, forgot about it, went on with my life, and it wasn't until, oh goodness, we moved back to East Texas. I had gotten married, and we moved to Longview and to Minden, Louisiana, and then back to Tyler, Texas. And I'd started photographing the sky, and when I'd look at a picture, I'd start seeing images in the sky that I photographed. And they got more and more brilliant, and I've sent you some of them. I think it was about 2014 when it started coming back again. And I started looking up at the sky, and I'd start seeing things. And I became a psychiatric nurse, okay? So I started seeing things, and I'm thinking, my God, they give people medication for what I'm seeing, And I need to shut up because I was still a psychiatric nurse.
These things externally?
Yes. I think I sent you the picture of the clown that's over my bedroom, over a room in the house, and it looks like a cat in the sky or a being. That one was photographed, but I was beginning to see beings in the sky that looked just similar to that, but different colors, and they were really there. It was like, oh my God, I'm a psych nurse and I need to be on medication, From 2014 into, oh gosh, maybe it was 2009. Thinking back, I'm going to jump back to the story later because I've got to get into my near-death experience before I tell you about the Irmas. Remind me about the Irmas because I'll sound totally nuts if I tell the story now. 2009, back to the Irmas, okay? Because the Irmas appeared to me, and I knew I was nuts, and I ran inside one summer, and I said, I can't see that. I'm not hallucinating. I don't need medication. And so I said, leave me, go away. And so they left. As I'm approaching 2019, I'm still a psychiatric nurse. I've just gotten a huge job working for the state in psychiatric nursing, and I was told to take a flu shot. Well, I have been allergic to flu shots since 2014. I am not an anti-vaxxer, I don't get into that, but I could not take the flu shot. But I was told if I did not take the flu shot, then I'd have to wear a mask for 8 hours or quit. And so I'm an asthmatic, and so I said, okay, I'll get the flu shot. I don't want to leave this wonderful brand new job that I just got. And so I got it. And within 24 hours, both of my eyes were dilated. I went to 3 ophthalmologists, and they're all saying that after 22 years of nursing, I've touched medications and my eyes dilated, and they stayed dilated for 2 months. Totally ridiculous, because nurses, if they touch a medication, they immediately wash their hands. It's just standard practice. That's what we do. You can't serve 40 people medications with gloves on. You can't work, your hands can't work that fast. So we serve up medications and give out to 40 people in 3 hours, and then go wash our hands in between. That's why our hands are always so dry. So they tried to tell me that I had touched medications and that my eyes dilated. I started studying about the flu shot and the side effects of flu shots, and one subject does come down and says that your one eye will dilate. It doesn't say anything about two, but I started swelling. My body, after that flu shot, I gained like 30 pounds in just a matter of weeks. I could not eat anymore. I had to quit that job because I couldn't see to go out in the daytime, but I had to work, so I had to take a nighttime job. So I'd go to work at night, I'd come home in the morning, and I'd jump in bed and sleep all day. I came home one morning, and I was just sick as a dog. I could not breathe. My asthma medication was not working. I was using it more and more because since the flu shot, I just couldn't breathe. It was just mounting and mounting on me. And so I came home that day, and my son cooked this wonderful gourmet meal, and I couldn't eat it. I was vomiting, and by evening, I was so confused, there would be no way I could get to the hospital because my oxygen level was evidently going down because of none of my asthma inhalers were working. So I collapsed.
Was this after the flu shot then?
Yes.
Was this like weeks?
Or a week, over 2 months. So what happened is I turned on the evening news, and the guy said on TV, it was February the 8th, he said, don't go outside, it's the coldest day of winter, there's ice on the road. And I lived in the country, and I'm thinking to myself, I picked a fine time to die. Boom. I don't even remember hitting the floor. I knew I collapsed, and that's it. That's all I knew. 4 or 5 days later, I wake up and I'm in ICU. And my son told me that I stopped breathing. My daughter told me I looked dead and horrible. And my son told me they did CPR on me for over an hour. And that's why I'm so raspy, because they intubated me. And so they damaged the vocal cords. So it's not just asthma, it's the vocal cords have been damaged. Anyway, so I wake up in ICU, and because I've gone so long without oxygen, over an hour, I have an anoxic brain injury now, and I've recuperated quite a bit. I went 3 years in rehab. I could not even count for you. I couldn't tell you what 2 plus 2 was. I didn't know what a word meant. I had to use a dictionary, and of course I didn't tell anybody. I was in speech therapy, and I would cry because they'd give me word problems and I couldn't solve them. And these were word problems a kid would be given, and I couldn't solve them. So I spent like 3 years in rehab, and I had to go through physical. They fractured my neck and a whole bunch of things.
In treating you, you had a neck fracture?
Gave me CPR, they fractured my neck. Yeah, and my spine.
Jeez, Bonnie, gosh.
Well, let me tell you that being a nurse, I've never given CPR on anybody for over an hour. So why they gave me CPR for over an hour? They must have been getting some heavy duty messages to keep working on her, you know? My son told me he followed them to the hospital and they'd pull over the side of the road and work on me. I was 12 miles from the hospital and it took them over an hour to get there because they pulled over so many times. And I have a video of myself on my bedroom floor and my breast just hanging out my son took this video of them doing this. It's so crazy. I eliminated the other one because I was kind of embarrassed of it, but I'm glad I kept one of them because a lot of people will say, oh, you're lying, blah, blah, blah. And so now I have the video if anybody says, oh, you're lying. Anyway, I start to wake up in the hospital a little bit. My mind is still real screwed up. But my best friend is an art therapist. And after I got home from the hospital 3 weeks later, she starts asking me to draw pictures. And I'm saying, I can't draw pictures. What I saw, I said, do you realize that suddenly you don't just see the universe, you are in the universe. You are part, it's 360. There's nothing flat, there's nothing sturdy. You're not seeing the same as you hear.
When you were in and out for those 12 miles to get you there in, just over an hour, was that when you had these near-death experiences?
I coded then, and according to the hospital records, I must have coded a few times, actually. It's in the records. I write on my near-death experience. I don't know if it was on the 8th or the 9th. The hospital record says the 9th, but I clearly remember the 8th. So there's a whole lapse of time there. I don't know. I don't know exactly when it was. I have a feeling that it happened over a long period of time. I don't know. I wish I could answer that, but I don't know. When I tell my NDE story, you have to remember there's no time on the timeline. So everything happens at once, but there's no chaos. So when I say that, how can that be? Well, it's like being in a balloon bubble, okay? And in the balloon bubble, everything's happening at once, but one little incident pokes up, and that's the incident you're living at that moment. Okay, and another little incident happens, and you remember that moment, and then maybe another one, and then maybe another one, but there's nothing on a timeline. So I had to put everything on a timeline so that I remembered it in an order. It may not be in that order, but that's how I put it in, okay? So I'm suddenly on the other side, and either I'm in a Petri dish or something, and I say out loud, hey, am I in here by myself? Am I alone? And something rolls over to me without saying anything. I think it was a bot or something. And like a seed growing, I grew into like this being, a plant or being where I could communicate. And all of a sudden, I saw myself in a mountains around me, and I saw blood coming down the mountains, and I see an Asian man stirring blood. And I said, oh my God, am I in hell? And the Asian man says to me, do you believe that you're in hell? I said, no. He says, well, then you're not. So that told me whatever we believe is where we're at. Okay. So I said, no, I don't think I am. I said, I have no reason to be. He says, well, then you're not. I said, well, what are you doing? He says, you're at the cleansing pool. And he says, and every time you go to a different layer, you will be cleansed. So when you rise up a layer, you get cleansed. Now, I'm going to get to the alien business in just a minute, okay? So bear with me. It's going to connect. As soon as I'm finished talking to the Asian guy, I'm suddenly in the desert. And I look in the desert, and off in the distance, I see an old friend. And that old friend is on the book cover. And that being, I call an alien, E.T., and I can't tell if it's male or female. It's asexual being. He speaks telepathically to me. Now, my children told me that that's my mother. That's who they saw in the being. But I saw a male. And so it says to me, here are some beautiful things, and I want you to look at them. And we went to see the pyramids, and we went to all the magnificent places in this world. And suddenly, in the desert, I'm alone, and I see this huge stone round structure. It's perfectly round, and it's off in the distance, and it rolls towards me, and it comes to rest at my feet. I look up at it, and I touch it, and it's like a texture I've never felt before, and there's no writing on it. It's like 18 feet high and gigantic wide. And all of a sudden, the 5 to 6 o'clock slice opens up, and it's like an invitation to step through. And so I think that's probably when the actual near death occurred. My guess. I don't know. I'm out of body in the other, but here's where I walked through to the other side. When I walked through to the other side, the being is with me, my friend, and I believe is here is when we went to see the pyramids, and we went to the Sumerian tablets, and he had me touch the Sumerian tablets, and when I touched it, I knew I had been there before. I knew that this was a reincarnation, and that I had experienced this. I knew it, and it knew it, and it kind of smiled at me. It said to me, "Are you ready?" And I said, "For what?" He said, "I want you to stretch your arms out." And he says, "Use your thought." He says, "Because now you're going to fly at the speed of thought. We're going to go anywhere we want to, but we're going to use the speed of thought." And so we took off, and we headed towards Orion's Belt. Evidently, that's the perimeter where I relate to. My family is in that area. We approached this gigantic spacecraft, huge. I mean, like Manhattan, big. And we go in the back door, not in the front door, but in the back door, and walk up a long hall. And we walk into a room where there are no walls. There is no foundation. There's a table, but there's no foundation, and there is a chair, but there's no legs. You're imagining these. You're seeing this clairvoyantly.
Bring it into reality with your mind.
Yes. So you're telepathically seeing these things as you're told to walk into the room. And as I was standing there, 5 beings walked in, and they told me to please have a seat. And when they walk in, okay, there are 5. The 5th one to walk in was a very tall white alien. Very tall. There was no eye contact, and I felt it was a female entity, and she held the books. And then there was a person next to her, and then a person in the center that was very blue, like the color of a bird, and then a person that I didn't recognize, and then a very, very small alien being that looked like a small gray. And the 2 beings that I didn't see were deliberate for some reason. I don't know why. The bluebird, I felt was a bird type, okay, kind of like a thoth. And then I felt that the little alien was the friendly one. He was the polite one. He was the one that said, "Please come in, don't be frightened, da-da-da-da." This is where they talk about having a life review, which I don't remember. But this is where I start seeing things. And here is where I said to them, "Hey, everybody else has tunnels, lights, angels, blah, blah, blah. I didn't get that. How come?" And they looked at me like, "Okay, all right, you're getting so much more." Okay, they didn't answer. They just looked at me. And I said to them, "I'm deaf. I need to hear. Will you please make sure that I can hear while I'm here?" And they said, "Really? Do you need to hear? You're speaking telepathically. Do you need to hear? Are you sure you need to hear?" And I thought about it. I said, "Yeah, they're right. I don't need to hear." There's so much in that center that I'll come back to. But at this point, it was said to me, well done, you did a good job. You're free to go. You are free to go into the universe wherever you want, unattended if you want to go.
Oh, wow, that sounds like you really made the grade.
I made the grade, whatever it was. And so they opened the back door of the starship, and I said goodbye to my guide, and I took off. I forgot this two parts. While I was in the starship, they took me into a room with all these little workmen. They asked me to read binary code for them. And I said, I don't read binary code. And they said, really? And they handed me a booklet, and I must have read the whole doggone thing. They took that booklet and threw it on the floor and burned it. They had such laughter over burning paper. To them, that was so much fun. I don't know why. But I remember looking at them. They just had such joy.
Did you do the binary?
Yeah, evidently I did. I mean, then they showed me the star charts, and suddenly I saw everything that my father had told me. The sky opened up, and I could identify, there's Cassiopeia, there's the Big Dipper, there's the Small Dipper, there's all the signs in the sky. They were up there. So at that point, I knew I was going, and that's when they said, okay, you're free to go. You can go. I did. I took off. I was alone. However, I was not followed, as in spying, but accompanied by someone should I get lost. And it was a young male, and he really never said anything. He just waved, and I waved back. And he was there if I had any questions that I needed to ask. And we really didn't communicate too much. He was very human looking. He had dark hair, and he was probably about 23. He smiled. He just seemed to be maybe a child or something that I had, or somebody who I knew, or maybe an ancestor or somebody looking after me. They didn't identify themselves as that, but they were accompanying me, And so I sat on the side of a planet, and I watched the Elohim off in the distance, and it was a huge, brilliant formation of lights that I describe as a witch's wand, because that's what it looks like. It was like a straight line with illuminating lights coming off of it. It was like through the universe, like just making beautiful nebuluses and just making stars, and it was smiling and having so much joy and just creating. And it looked back at me and said, this is what life is about. It's about creating. It's about enjoying what you do. And I want you to, it didn't say I want you to create. I feel like it was saying, create. That's why we're here, to create and to enjoy. So, boom, boom, boom. And so I just sat there watching that. All of a sudden I could hear my sister in the distance, and she was going, Bonnie, come home, you've got to come home. She said, she talked to my deceased mother, and she said, my mother said it's not your time. You don't need to be there. You need to come home. You have animals. Somebody has to come home and take care of these animals. And I could hear my children in the background, Mom, please come home. It's not your time. And I'm like, but I don't want to come home. And I know the being said to me, you have a choice. It's your choice. Because my death experience, I had a respiratory arrest, I had a stroke, and I had a myocardial infarction all at once. And I went without oxygen. And so I said, oh, I'm going to be coming back. And I'm not going to be the person that I was, I could hear my sister, and I just really ignored her. I knew about my dogs and my cats, and I don't want to deal with that. I'm ready to let that go. It felt so good to be free, not worry if they're barking or, I'm just ignoring her and ignoring my children. I just really didn't want to go back. And so finally I looked at the guy and I said, okay, I guess I'll go back. He says, okay, are you sure? And I said, Yeah, I guess. Okay, and so remember I said that I asked them, I said to them, well, I didn't get a tunnel, I didn't get lights, I didn't get all that stuff. And so he says, okay, he says, I just want you to jump into the tunnel. I said, okay. And when I jumped into the tunnel, it was a purple tunnel. He sent me back through purple. And so he said, as I'm going down the tunnel, I'll never forget his words. Don't forget the love. Well, this is the first time in my near-death experience that they had brought up to me love, because that mine was not necessarily about love. It was about things that I loved and interests and fascinations. So he says to me, don't forget the love. He said, love is the glue that holds or binds all things. And so that was all he said. And so I wrote that down. And even in my brain injured mind, I wrote that down. It's the glue that binds all things. It also showed me an equation that doesn't make any sense to me now, but it made a lot of sense to me then. And it was memories, or in order to remember as we think now, you must have earth and oxygen. Oxygen is what makes us remember here. Without oxygen, our mind dissipates. So oxygen unites us and our memories to earth and everything that we remember. It's part of the, like a cake mix, it's part of the batter. You've got to have oxygen.
Yeah.
I zip back in my body. I'm still in ICU. I don't remember coming back in my body. I just remember waking up and looking up and seeing that they had medication hanging above me that I'm allergic to. Freaked out when I saw that medication. And I can't remember what it was, but I was very swollen again. And so my friend that's the art therapist told me, she said, you need to start painting this stuff. You need to start making designs of it. And so I reluctantly, after a while, said, okay, I'll do it. And so I started drawing like a child, scribbling pictures. And then, because drawing was a lot easier than communicating, because it was very difficult for me to talk. I could talk, but I didn't know what I was saying to you or to anybody. Even now, I'll get hung up on words. I won't know what the word is or what I should use. Okay.
About medication, were you conveyed to them that this was not something okay for you?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but immediately they stopped it and the swelling went down. I just happened to be aware enough to know what you have hanging over my head isn't good. As I began to draw the pictures, I became more and more aware of my experience. So I started to draw the mountains with the blood, and just one thing that my guide showed me is he had held his hand up and let the earth flow through his hand to the ground. And in his hand, I saw all kinds of elements in the earth that I had never seen. And what he showed me is that like a fractal world, we're all connected, like it's sky, earth. I mean, it just, the smallest, minutest thing, there's a whole fractal world within that we can't see bacteria and viruses, but inside the bacteria and viruses are their own worlds, that.
And was he, when you said he was showing you through his hand, was it like a hologram that you were seeing?
Kind of similar, kind of like a hologram, but it was his hand, but in his hand were all kinds of sand. There was definitely sand there. There was golds and silvers, and I think there were some gems there, and just some beautiful fragments that the earth is made up of. And so he was showing me just the beauties of the earth to look at, to admire. Also, now my mind is fragmented. I mean, I can't comprehend then as well as I do now. I had gotten back and I knew I was supposed to take an herb class. And so I signed up for a college herb class that was 5 months. I talked to the college professors and I told them beforehand what my mind was. And they told me, don't worry, it's an open book test. You get a test each week, but we know where you're coming from, and don't worry about it, just take the course. Because I was taking the course not only to learn, but to expand my mind. And so I did it with the idea that I would go in and I'd barely pass, but it would be okay, just because I was exercising my mind. But when I went in and I took the course, I was in there with people of very high, prestigious professions, and I made higher than anybody in the class. There were doctors in the class, and of course they are working, and when I'm taking, they don't have probably the time to spend on it that I did, but I actually took the class, I think a year and 3 or 4 months had gone by. There would be no way that I could have taken it that first year. I still can't tell you what 5 plus 7 is. I've got to go 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, So there's some things now that I still can't do. And in fact, I took an IQ test in 2022. That's when they discovered that I had some autism. In 2022, it said that my brain was functioning at almost, I'm using the word retarded. I know that's improper, but I was impaired, mentally impaired. My mind has grown enormously since 2022. I have just expanded. I grew the most between 2022 and now.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And what about you, the ET experience? Did you have any other encounter, or was there any other, sort of healing going on with those? Was there anything else going on like that?
I have some things that have occurred that are, before my incident, I was fairly psychic. However, I'm not psychic like that anymore, but what I have is whenever I do psychic things, I'm more accurate.
Fascinating.
I'm not guessing as much. So if I know something, I know something. After it occurred, I knew much more than I know now. And in fact, it was almost like for 2 years after the incident, I still had a foot there because I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I mean, I was gone for a very long time. It was as though I was still connected to it. And even now, I go to sleep at night, I have dreams, and I am definitely connected. Now, the beings that I saw when I was a child are way different than the beings that I met in my near-death experience. And I need to let people know that because, of course, the ones that I met in my near-death experience were loving and kind and wanted the very best for me, where the others were not.
Find out anything more about those guys, the ones who were just interested in your dad but somehow needed to come to your room to get to him?
I am not seeing them. I'm feeling them. When you're up there, when you're in the afterlife, you don't see, that. You're perceiving with your consciousness. But here, on this side, I'm feeling. So I feel their presence. At nighttime, I know they are communicating with me because I wake up with things that I would never dream, I would never think of. I wake up with being able to explain things to people that I had never thought about, especially on consciousness.
So do you think that that was sort of a major spiritual upgrade?
Yes. It was more on understanding consciousness and how to teach it to people later. It wasn't so much on here's a gift for you, and that's great. I love that. But it's more on the ability to be able to teach consciousness. What is happening? Are we our consciousness, or are we inside a consciousness? Are we part of the entire being consciousness, or are we our own separate identity consciousness? Is consciousness sitting on a shelf somewhere with our name on it in the afterlife, or are we a part of that huge being that is consciousness everything? You understand what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, I do. Creation, the essence of creativity, is consciousness, isn't it? It's through that portal. Or maybe it's inextricably mixed or linked.
It's kind of like visuals. It's like manifestation, okay? So when I was on that side, I saw that we do have pods, just like in the movie The Matrix. Doesn't look like that, but we have our pods. And our pods are our consciousness. when we're in our consciousness, inside the whole big consciousness, are we dreaming ourselves up? Are we creating our world? And so I was able to see that we do create. So some people have a near-death experience and they're experiencing their beliefs, okay? But that's their conscious perception of their beliefs. I saw ETs because that's what I believe. That's what I consciously believe. And I was told there that they are our creators. And I know people who believe in angels and all the other things. They believe that they've been told the same thing. So I come back to, we've all been told that ETs were our creators, or angel, or God was our creator. But it all comes back to the central core question. What is consciousness?
And what is God?
And even though consciousness kind of was curious before my near-death experience, now it's like, wow, we are manifesting everything. We really are.
And did you see yourself manifesting that event, that sort of trauma events, as a vehicle to give you a real boost?
I saw the pods. I don't know. It comes to, I didn't know everything all at once. It still comes to me at night. I don't know the whole thing, you know? And I can only take little bits and pieces, what I hear over here and put mine together and say, oh, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because none of us get the whole package, you know? Because if we did, we'd blow up. We wouldn't be able to handle it.
I'm sure that's correct. Can I ask you, did God come into this in any way, or was consciousness used as that concept or perception? I just wondered if God was there in your perception of things.
Well, before it, I had been a traditional Christian until 1998. Then I became a Gnostic Christian from 1998 until my incident. So during my incident, and I very much believed in God, I studied Christian Gnosticism. After my incident, the word God seemed so man-made that somebody at a class that I took said it's called the primal source. Well, that made more sense to me. And I'm not even sure that that's correct. But it is primal. It is the beginning of all existence. And so what has come to me is that God is in a world where there's a beginning and an end, okay? And what I saw was a fractal environment, meaning that we're in an age of, we're sitting on a fractal piece right now in an age of time where there is a God. But that fractal age is going to turn over, and there will be a birth of a new era or time. And it's constantly changing. It's an element of mechanics, of magnetics, of quantum physics.
And it's fascinating too, going back to the Elohim with their wonderful magic wand.
Well, that's the best way to describe it, because that's what I saw in my NDE. It's like boom, boom, boom. You know, it's like a brilliant lights, and it's just having such fun, like casting that wand and creating that nebulous. And I learned when we're there that we are so judgmental. We judge everything. And if we don't know it or we don't like it, it becomes the devil or a demon or blah, 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 you know. And I'm not saying that there's not that. I mean, if you can create that, that will be for you, okay? You will create that. Monsters and boogies and all, we have ability to create that. So if you have a near-death experience and you have angels, gods, or you have demons or what, because that's what your mind is connected to. That's what you're associating with. But I'm associating with aliens and ETs. And so that's what I created. And so in the middle somewhere is the creation of energy and magnetics and imagination. I love the word imagination.
No, it's good to see any relatives, parents, or people you've been close to.
No. And I kept asking about them. Where are my parents? Where are my, you know, where are my animals? And animals are very connected, and none of them were there. And all they were saying, you've got forever. You've got, what's the hurry? Slow down. And so, but I was like, okay, but I'd like to see them. Maybe they had already been reincarnated or whatever, but there is no time over there. So even if they were on a reincarnation, another life, doesn't mean that that life can't stop for a moment, and because
Yeah.
there is no timeline, when you're on that side. That's something else.
Brings us, if this is the right spot to remind you, as you'd asked me
The
to,
Irma.
the Irma.
Yes, okay, so I was a psychiatric nurse. I think it was 2011 because I had somebody living with me. And so we were out in the backyard one Easter, and it was beautiful. We were sitting outside. The person goes inside, and I'm outside by myself, and I looked up in the sky, and I saw this gigantic cat being. And I thought, oh my God, I like, oh, please stop. This can't be. I'm a psych nurse. I can't see this stuff. I'm thinking, am I losing my mind? I said, just go away, leave me alone, don't come back. And so it tried to come back one other time. And I said, no, no, no. My near-death experience was in 2019. So in 2022, the summer that I was diagnosed, I had my IQ test done. I'm out in the backyard, and it's warm outside, and I do qigong outside. And I'm out there alone, and I look up in the sky, and lo and behold, is this beautiful, gigantic cat dressed in royalty in the clouds. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing? I said, okay, all right, okay, you could be up there. And I saw this being up there. We didn't speak. We didn't communicate. And as from summer until almost the next summer, there was no communication. But I went out there, and they were always outside, okay? I'd go outside, I'd look up in the sky, and I wasn't drinking, and I wasn't doing drugs. I'd look up, and sure enough, in the clouds, I would see these beautiful cat faces that were in royalty.
Did else see that? Or was it just for you?
Oh, I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. Finally, about 8-9 months went by, and I'm still pretty brain damaged. I said, okay, I spoke to it. I said, all right, I see you. I said, do you mind if I tell people how to get you to show up in their lives? And it says, you can tell whoever you want to, but we don't show up unless we want to. Okay, so in order to do this, you don't have to know who they are. You just get into some meditation and kind of open up, and they're always outside in the clouds. And you will begin to see this cat royalty. And I showed you a picture that I took in my backyard of a tree with a picture of a cat in the tree, but in cloud form. It's actually a cloud behind the tree, but it's a cat face, or a being that looks like a cat. So I started studying about the Irma, and I came to find out their name is Irma, Urmah, and they are a royalty cat. They are from the series SIRIS planetary group, and they were one of the original ETs that visited the Earth, and they claim to be the ones that created human beings. They were one of the original. I don't know how this happened, but I'm in the shower one day, and this is after I've started talking to them a little bit, and all of a sudden it came into my bathroom, and like boom, and the soap fell off, went flying across the room, and it was just such a powerful boom, because they're so enormous and so, it wasn't trying to scare me, it was trying to prove a point to me. And I can't remember what the point was that I was asked it.
And did you see it? Did it materialize?
I knew it was it. I knew it was. It's relatively, you asked me to show you, and so here I am. And this is what happens when we come in spaces. They were just so absolutely powerful. I thought, okay, did I come from the Irmas? Because why would they be trying to come to me since 2009?
Do they look completely feline, either, like
Yes.
walking on four legs, or are they bipedal? And
They're upright. They do not eat meat, believe it or not. They eat synthetic meats. They are theatrical. They love the drama. They love theatrics. They love politics. They're extreme politicians. They are rulers.
I love the theatrical bit, because that's a strong part of my nature as well.
Yeah.
Very strong. So is it the cat head, or does
The
their
whole
body?
body. Well, up in the clouds, you'll only see the face and maybe some hands. But when you start looking at them in books, they'll show you the whole picture of them.
I am
Okay.
intrigued. I've never heard of them. I have.
I know they're from the Lyran,
Oh,
Cirrus B. I think they come from Cirrus B.
yeah. Fascinating stuff.
Yes, it is. So I have not, since I've moved to Galvaston, I have not had any contact with them, unfortunately.
Which has been, what, a year or two, or?
Almost 2 years. There's not a lot of activity here, unfortunately. It might be the cloud coverage. It's always cloud covered here. Either I don't see them, or
Or
they're
maybe
just,
it's a time for you to have to restore without any input.
I was told that in order to contact them, you must be on the 8th level. They operate on the 8th level, and when they came, so they're coming through from the 8th level to our level, because when that being came through to me years ago, it came through to me. I mean, I was thinking, but I wasn't meditating so deep. When I did the Qigong, now I could have been at a higher level. But they were trying to contact me. Just to make contact. They didn't ever say the reason, but it was like a whole family of them came through. It was like I could see all different tortoiseshell ones, and just like cats.
Maybe it's your family.
Maybe. I don't know. Could be. I would hope so. So that's really about it for us. I'll think of some other things later, but I'm so glad that you and I got to talk, because I mentioned the other day, I'm going to mention this again to the audience, that it is, unfortunately, it's mostly men that are into the ufology who control the situation. And it's unfortunate for women, because I don't think that we're heard enough. And I'm not saying that they don't have the things to contribute, but I think it should be more of a joint effort. And I don't think that it should be always men running it. And that's what I see, and I find it very disappointing. I said earlier that before anyone runs out to a field with their arms wide open, be cautious, know 100% that the beings that you're speaking to are good, and somehow make that connection. Because the world and us, everything around us, we're on the 360 degrees. We are on the yin and yang. We have 360 degrees of everything. We have dark and light. Everything does. And that would mean the universe does too. So not everything in the universe is good.
Opportunities for discernment.
Yeah.
Being diplomatic.
Yeah, just be wise, just
Well,
be.
thank you very much for
Thank
sharing,
you.
Really fascinating story. And I'm aware that we've sort of jumped a little bit on a timeline, but that we've gone for the most impacting experiences. And I really want to, thank you again. It's not easy to share these events, even if you want to. People can feel quite vulnerable, and it's sort of the one reason that I started up what I'm doing way back in 2011 was to give people like yourself a platform, an unjudgmental ear, so they
Thank you.
feel safe.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
know that at least one little bod heard you, and a few people. And that's what we can do. We're a light, we're a beacon for others, and that's what it's about. It's about sharing it, because there'll be someone who sees this and will go, I'm ready to share now. And a lot of experiences are quite scary, and like yours were when you were a child. And these are all such amazing growth factor impulses in us, but it's hard to see it when we have PTSD of a kind. And,
Right.
I think a lot of experiences do, in fact, have that kind of thing. We bring compassion to, even if we don't understand it, it doesn't matter. We can just keep talking and asking, keeping that energy frequency higher. But just before we go, we haven't talked about your book.
I did write the book, and I still had quite a bit of brain damage. It's very elementary, written from an elementary level, and quite a bit of information has come to me after it, but I think it's a very good starting point. It's called My Near-Death Experience to Orion's Belt and Back with Extraterrestrials. I'm on Facebook as I talk more about this on Mimsy Notions, my Facebook page, Mimsy Notion. I'm also, you can reach me at Bonnie G. Jennings at gmail.com. When you write something in the subject that you saw this program, so I won't trash it. Hey, I've really enjoyed our connection. Thank you so much.
And hopefully we'll do it again.
I hope so. Let's do it again. Okay.
And, thank you again. It's,
okay.
Bless you for doing all
You too.
do.
Thank you.
What you've been through. So keep on drawing.
All right. Thanks.
God bless.
All right. You too. You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye-bye.
Look after yourself.